remember somebody once saying, if Skyrim hit for you, it really hit. And if it didn't, then it probably really missed. But if it hit, it hit. I think games are dope when you can replay it a bunch of times and create a new or different experience. I'm sure most of y'all probably know Skyrim really hit for me. I just like the vibe, the builds, the freedom you have to create cool character builds, play different roles, and how you're going to impact the world around you. But before I go any further into Skyrim videos, I think it's important to briefly go over the story in Skyrim because, to be honest, the story it isn't exactly crystal clear and spelled out for us. I realized this when I was playing and I didn't even really know much about what was happening and why. I think having a good understanding of these things can make the entire experience a lot better. I know it did for me, because once I understood the who, the what, and the why, the game really became such a much more dope experience. So in this video, I'm going to briefly discuss what the hell is going on in Skyrim in 3 main points that I think are most interesting and important. Sit back, relax, and let's dive in. Skyrim and the land. So the first main point is that Skyrim and the land is located in the northern part of the continent of Tamriel. It is the homeland of the Nords, a hardy and resilient people with a strong resistance to frost. The region is characterized by its cold and mountainous landscape, dotted with forts, camps, and ruins. The Nords of this land aren't too fond of outsiders, as it is in most Elder Scrolls games. Their pride and sometimes stubbornness creates a divide amongst the Nords and other races. I like to think of Nords kinda like Saiyans, very proud and sometimes too stubborn for their own good. I personally don't mind the Nords myself, but many other races do, which brings me to the next main point. The Thalmor. The Thalmor are a political faction and extremist paramilitary force within the Aldmeri Dominion. The Aldmeri Dominion, a fictional empire in the Elder Scrolls universe, initially established as a joint diplomatic corps and military police group for the Aldmeri Dominion's armies. The Thalmor later evolved into a powerful force within the Altmeri society. And for those who don't know, the Altmer are just like a race of elves basically, and a lot of them, not all of them, but most of them think that they're better than other races. Hence the high elf race in the game. The Thalmor are known for their radical and xenophobic ideology, which emphasizes the absolute supremacy of elves over all other Tamrielic peoples. They are opposed to the worship of Talos, a human deity, and enforce the ban on Talos worship as part of the White Gold Concordat. The Thalmor, as evil as they are, play a big role in the plot and of Elder Scrolls. The White Gold Concordat is an agreement in Tamriel forcing the ban of Talos. The lore goes really deep with the Thalmor, so to sum it up briefly, the Thalmor are a bunch of high elves who are very skilled in magic, who are basically on a quest for world domination and want to enslave and destroy every other race in Tamriel. The reason they're so important to Skyrim is because they are the ones that are pitting the Nords and the Stormcloaks versus the Imperials. What I find interesting is how the Thalmor are fighting without even fighting. See, when the White Gold Concordat was initially being forced on the Empire, they didn't agree. In fact, they almost hated the White Gold Concordat and basically told the Thalmor to get lost. However, the Thalmor had just ended a war and were very weak, so them with many others in Tamriel went along with that White Gold Concordat because they were forced into that situation due to unfortunate circumstances. They did this only temporarily. They only agreed to it until they could unify Skyrim to fight back against the Thalmor. However, many others, such as the Nords of Skyrim, saw this as a sign of weakness, that they were becoming puppets to the Thalmor, and that they wanted to fight them. Why fight against the world when we can just have them fight each other? The Thalmor were probably thinking. So by enforcing the White Gold Concordat, the Thalmor are able to create a divide amongst the forces of Skyrim, which should be on the same side. This is why I joined the Imperials. I know, but it's because I can see the strategy Imperials are trying to use to win against the Thalmor. Like, they just said, hey, let's just play along for now, and then when our opportunity arises, we can take these dudes out. Go for the kill. Understanding the Civil War really made the game hit different for me. All this knowledge is just cool. Like the fact that the Imperials are actually made up of a bunch of Nords. Like even Legged Ricky, she'll drop like all hints of sympathy to the Stormcloaks throughout the game, and I never even picked up on that at first. But she understands the Nords in their culture, and you can tell like she low-key has respect for it. So anyways, there's guys on both sides of the Civil War that probably were at one point homies, but now they gotta kill each other. And they won't hesitate to do so. So there's the Thalmor and the Brotherhood of Steel, pretty much. That's pretty much what the Thalmor are like, the Brotherhood of Steel from Fallout. The Civil War. I saved the Civil War for last because it's probably my personal favorite quest line in the game. In my opinion, it's one of the few quest lines which story is written in such good detail, and I think it does a good job of making sure its importance is felt to the player. The Civil War also has a big impact in other quest lines as well, which is why I think it's so cool being able to see the impact the wars had, not just on Skyrim, but all of Tamriel. So the Civil War, who's fighting and why? The Stormcloaks versus the Imperials. They fighting because of the Thalmor, as I mentioned earlier. The Stormcloaks hate the Imperials because when they agreed to the White Gold Concordat, it looked as if they was joining the evil side. And as I said earlier, the Nords, as resilient and strong as they are, sometimes can be blinded by their stubbornness. Two key things I think you should know about the Stormcloaks. One, Ulfric Stormcloak, their leader, had his father mysteriously abducted and murdered by the Thalmor. At this time, Ulfric was in the custody of the Thalmor, most likely being tortured and used as a bargaining chip or something like that. When he was freed, he learned of his father's passing and was filled with grief and fury. This led him to murdering the High King Torg, the infamous story you probably heard about him shouting Torg to death. And this sums up the Stormcloaks to me because to Skyrim and people's Jarls, even in-game dialogue say that if he wanted Torg to stand up to the Thalmor, he probably would have had Ulfric just simply asked. But by acting out of pure emotion, all he really accomplished by killing Torg was create even more chaos. I think the Stormcloaks mean well, but sometimes, and by banishing the worship of Talos, which the Stormcloaks and the Nords need in their lives as part of ancient Nordic tradition, is Talos worship. So that really hit them deep when they banned Talop worship. But a fun fact that I find even more interesting, however, is that had they just waited a year or two, the Thalmor would have just given up enforcing it altogether. So basically, they could have just let them have their way for a couple years, and then they would have just went back to being able to worship Talos freely. And to me, to wage war over not being able to worship for 2 years just doesn't seem like a choice that benefits Skyrim. But that's just my opinion. Anyways, the second most important thing I think you should remember about the Stormcloaks is that the Imperial army has many Nords within its troop, as I mentioned earlier. Many of them themselves worship Talos. Even the Emperor in the Brotherhood, they actually speak on how if you get far enough in the game and assassinate the Emperor, that he actually has a Talos, a chain of Talos in his chest. So even him was worshiping Talos. So anyways, just a fun fact that you should know, because a lot of people actually worship Talos. So really basically that's them pretty much giving the middle finger to the Thalmor, if you think about it. So really nobody is caring about the Thalmor. So which is another crazy reason that I find the Civil War crazy, because I think this is key though. I think this is key because it shows the amount of respect there is for Nords and their traditions. Nords tend to sometimes act as if the world is against them, but it's the nature of their people that sometimes makes others dislike them, that they don't understand their tradition. If the Imperials and Stormcloaks could set aside their differences and unite as one to take out the Thalmor, the world would be a better place. But the world and the war has caused too much chaos and confusion, and it's sort of similar to the world we live in, where we all want peace, we all want the same things, and we should just be working together to achieve it. But there's too many labels and too much division of us and hatred of people that are different from each other. And so in conclusion, I hope this gives a better idea of Skyrim and what's happening. I'll be doing a lot of Skyrim, so I want to do a better job of explaining what's happening and why. Thank you for watching.